Okay, hi everyone. So today we have another episode of Startup Stories, and today I'm very happy to have Daniel Steele, the founder and CDO at eola. Welcome, Dan.
Hello. Thanks for having
Happy
me.
to- Yeah, how are you doing today, Dan?
All good. Yeah, happy it's Friday. But yeah, we recently won an award, so I was feeling pretty good.
Yeah, great. I heard about that. That's a big thing. So, Dan, I think we can go and start maybe with a little bit like your background and your story. Can you point us of like where you're coming from? So what is your story basically?
Sure. So yeah, I've been a developer for many years now. Which feels weird to say because it feels like the whole thing is so new. Imposter syndrome is definitely real. But yeah, over 6 years ago now, started a startup called eola, a booking and management platform for the activities industry. As yeah, co-founder, CTO, wrote the first line of code, and now we've got a solid team of engineers. We process about 2 million requests a day, and yeah, super in love with the product. Really love the space, and yeah, onwards and upwards.
And you personally, so as far as I understand, you were a developer, and originally from your LinkedIn, I read that you wanted to become a pilot. So what about that idea?
Yeah, so my journey to be here, like in hindsight, I think it makes a lot of sense. So I initially wanted to be a pilot, since I was like a tiny little child. I uh, when I was like 5 years old, someone who was looking after me asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said a pilot. I was just too young to actually pronounce pilot. She thought I said pirate. But yeah, so I my parents are super encouraging of it since I was a small kid because I think it's a cool career to aspire for a kid to go towards. Um, but then as I started approaching my teenage years, my parents made it quite clear that they are not going to pay for my pilot's license. So I started doing jobs on the side to make money. Um, and I think this is kind of like where I sort of started venturing slightly into the world of startups because I had a little tiny company teaching people how to fly a Microsoft Flight Sim where they would pay like tiny amounts of money, and a little group of people doing that. I had an IT call out company because I was always decent with computers, couldn't code, but would do like home call outs for people.
Hmm.
Um, um, sorry.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just go on. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I do home call outs for people. Like got some weird stories from fixing weird people's computers. And yeah, kind of scraped enough money to get a pilot's license. And before going off to uni to do aero engineering to help get that job, walked into a company called Chilton IT, and asked to do some work there in the summer. Um, I literally just walked up to them because they had IT in the name, and I thought I can do stuff with the computers. Asked for an internship there, just like literally just working there during the summer. I got given some really boring tasks, like really boring tasks. I remember 40,000 line spreadsheet that had been generated from like a scrape that they'd done, and they wanted me to just sort it out because all of the columns were in weird setups. And I spent the first day doing it, and I worked out that yeah, if I go through the entire process of this 40,000 line document, I'm only gonna get 2/3 of the way through in the entire summer, and screw that. So I tried to teach myself how to code to solve that problem, failed miserably, and ended up kind of subcontracting out that work, which my boss had very conflicted feelings about. He was like, that was a really stupid thing to do, but also like fair play. That was quite a smart thing to do.
But you did
Ended up
get
getting a
the
job there.
yeah.
Yeah, he ended up offering me a full time job, and I got super into it because I kind of got some room to actually teach myself how to program, and I was liking it more and more and more. And then shortly after I joined, the company announced it was in financial difficulty, and then got rid of like the wider tech team. So it was literally me, someone who was self-teaching themselves how to do basic code. And the way that they were going to save themselves as a company was to ask me to re-engineer like the whole thing. And I had no idea what I was doing. I made something happen, but the main thing that I learned was that I really enjoy doing this. So kind of, yeah, from there, kind of bounced around a decent amount. Started like, yeah, I got some slightly more formal training. Turned down like the whole pilot career because like I just genuinely fell in love with programming and the whole industry really. And yeah, ended up starting a web dev agency where I worked specifically. I wanted to work with startups because I felt like I could contribute a decent amount with not just the code side, but actually thinking about what should your product be? How do you break down this like crazy idea that you have? It's relatively similar to what you guys do, but obviously you do a much larger scale, much more formally. But we would talk to founders and try and take their idea from literally just an idea of like a concept. We want to try and solve this problem. We want to try and build this something. And often like main goal was translating that into something that was actually doable with the budget that they had. And a lot of reality checks. Normally that meant, again, sure you're quite familiar with.
For sure.
Limited budgets, limited time. There's only so much you can do. But I definitely enjoyed working with founders and trying to that process of turning something that was like this huge vague concept into actionable steps, and like what is the MVP, what is the goal, is it for fundraising, is it to like prove to yourself or customers, or yeah.
So this is where you
post that side
realize, oh sorry, so this is where you realize that like you want to do your own startup, your own company. Oh, sorry. Is my connection being broke?
Yeah, I think mine's okay.
Can you hear me well now?
Well, no, but I can hear you now.
Okay. I'll try to figure this out, but basically the recording is still local, so in the end we should get something good going. So, and this is where you realize that you want to build like a startup of your own, or this was like obvious for you from the beginning?
I think a little bit controversially, like I ended up shutting it down for a few reasons, but the honestly the main one was working with founders I felt was quite tiring. Because I think there are a lot of founders out there that are kind of clued in on how much work this sort of stuff takes, and like what reasonable budgets are, what reasonable timelines are. But there are also many who kind of expect the world for nothing, and then trying to engage in conversations with them about like what is reasonable doesn't necessarily go super well. And I felt that process a little bit frustrating. So I kind of actually moved away from startups a little bit and got a kind of more normal job elsewhere. And I was pretty content in this job. Like, I wasn't looking for a new place or anything, but I was just idly browsing work in startups. I think it was actually the first time I ever visited that site. And I remember just like, as I still do today, like sometimes quite genuinely laughing at like some of the job specs for CTOs or similar positions where it's kind of a similar vibe. Like I have nothing, I have no idea. Oh, sorry, I've got an idea, but nothing else. No budget, no like validation, no realistic expectations of how this might go down. We're going to be the size of Uber in 2 years. Join me and you'll get 0.1% of the company, sort of thing. But I remember seeing this one posting from a guy called Callum who was kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, and I just found that really interesting because it was one of the most, if not the most depressing. It wasn't even a job ad; it was just a depressing statement that basically said, "I've got an idea, I've done a decent bit of validation, and it seems like something might actually be here. I'm looking for someone to basically just like talk tech with, and you know, you could start maybe as a developer, you could join as a like more senior person, and it was very kind of like, you know, my cards on the table, this is the situation, and expectation is it probably won't work out. It's probably nothing. And I very much connected with that because I felt like that was a very realistic expectation of what it means to start a startup, right? Like, if it was easy or obvious, everyone would be, a millionaire immediately, right? And if it was just about having an idea, then again, everyone would succeed because it's really not so much about the idea, much more about the implementation and the execution of it, which I think we were both very much on the same page about. But yeah, I ended up having a couple calls where challenged the idea, and he was like super open about things that he did know about it, things that he had validated successfully, and things that he also didn't know, like complete unknowns. And yeah, we kind of went forward from there and ended up officially. Well, initially it was just like having a tech chat, but then asked to like, if I'm doing this, I want to be all in. So went from random tech guy from the internet to starting a business with Callum and became co-founder. And yeah, that's 6 years ago now.
Yeah, that's quite an unusual story, I think, but yeah, probably it happens a lot. And you were coming to this like partnership with a lot of like tech knowledge and tech background. Do you think like, and we talk with a lot of co-founders without technical experience and ask them how it went and how did they solve their problems? Do you think it is like easier like having this technical ability and technical knowledge, or you always need kind of like two sides of the story? So like you need like two co-founders that one of them is really a technical guy, another one with like, I don't know, vision, marketing, sales
Mm.
abilities. So what do you think about it?
I think it's a super good question. I think it's one of those things where it just depends so massively on the individuals and like the goal that you're trying to achieve. But I think the way that I often kind of like frame it is, I personally would never start a finance based company without having a co-founder that deeply understands finance.
Hmm.
And similarly, I wouldn't recommend to people to start a tech company without a co-founder or at least like a very senior leadership person from day one who deeply understands like how to actually deliver on what your vision is, because it's fundamental, right? Like it applies to anything, right? You wouldn't start a building company without any knowledge of how to perform construction. Um, and so it depends on the individuals. Like some people do genuinely just they might not have been a developer or anything like that, but they've got a good understanding of like product or how development works and how they can work with like outsourcing companies or whatever to achieve those goals. But frequently, and I guess from my experience at my dev agency, but also since then, I think quite frequently, um, you get founders, and I guess this is why I end up talking to them, right? That you get founders who are non-technical starting a tech company, and then I guess often realizing in hindsight a lot of the challenges that they just didn't know were there, which is like fair enough because like you don't know the problem's there until you've encountered it because you've got no one to tell you that there's a problem upcoming. So I super encourage people who are starting a company to within any kind of industry, like if it's a tech product, if it's a finance product, if it's a construction company, e-commerce, whatever, make sure at least one person on the founding team is kind of able to think about how that's actually implemented and executed on like in a very practical way. And then on your note about co-founders, there's a good friend of mine who's a solo founder who's seemingly doing an excellent job. I have no idea how he does it. I have genuinely no idea. Um, if I start another one after eola, it would definitely be again with a co-founder, because I think not only do you get the wider spread of knowledge, but also just emotional support, man. Like it's you're constantly punching up, right? By definition, it's a startup competing in a space probably has been dominated by massive companies. Emotional support, like validation of your own ideas, being able to actually talk to someone and who super understands all of the challenges in the moment, is way more useful than speaking to like a friend who you check in with like even regularly, because they just won't understand all of the nuance.
Yeah.
And splitting of responsibilities. There's so much to do all the time.
I see. Yeah, that is like a good vision, a good advice. So, and you've talked a bit about the idea and the validation. So let's talk a bit about eola. So, what does the product do? What problem does it solve? And if speaking about validating, so how did you validate the idea of your product?
Yeah, so um, the challenge that we solve is, well, we kind of had like a pivot over time in our early days. So initially, the problem that we were trying to solve was we felt that there were not good platforms out there that kind of aggregated activities and made them bookable.
Hmm.
There are online travel agencies. They're quite pervasive. Like Get Your Guide, Booking.com, Viator, all of those kinds of companies. But they don't actually have great market penetration. And we had a few different reasons to why. But like our goal was to build a marketplace to aggregate all of these activity centers. And obviously, we would just plug into all of the backend systems that they just had already and use that to power our marketplace. As we started doing, so I guess that's the point at that point we had, and this is some of the work that Callum had done before I even spoke to him, where he had created a fake marketplace. He had created fake ads to go to this fake marketplace, checked the click through rate, the number of people that actually like what was the cost per click essentially, and like the actual potential conversion that would result from all of that. And obviously it was a homemade site. It wasn't very good, but at least it validated that there were people out there trying to look for a marketplace. And even though it was a, sorry Callum if you're watching this, it was a bad site. Even though that was the case, people did click on the site, they clicked through the activities, they actually clicked the magic book now button, which then said surprise, this is actually all fake. So yeah, we wanted to plug in with the backend system so we could provide this marketplace. As we spoke to more customers, though, we realized that, yeah, I was starting to build the actual functionality, and it's starting to get into the point where, okay, well, now I need to start like properly like thinking about which systems we want to integrate with. We started like doing more research on the market, and I think, long story short, we weren't super content with what functionality was out there. Like I expected things with really kind of mature APIs, there to be loads of them, and they ought to have like really solid functionality and be quite modern because it's a massive industry, right? Like the outdoor activity space. And it just really wasn't the case, or at least it wasn't to our like the way that we would do it. So we ended up investing more and more time and kind of slowly pivoting from like this marketplace idea to, we actually need to build the backbone of this industry and make it so that if you, Anton, wanted to start a new like surf school or hiking club or rock climbing center or whatever, you could just use our tool to kind of do the end-to-end management of that center. And then that's what we identified pretty quickly that is actually where the majority of the value lies, just from why people were signing up and what they were engaging with and what they were feeding back about. Like, it became quite clear to us that, at least for our implementation, they didn't really care about the marketplace too much. We wanted to initially be like both sides of the coin. Like, we'll manage, you can manage via us, but then also you gain revenue via us. And it was when we like properly implemented our first iteration of our booking widget, which they can put on their own site, i.e. not a marketplace. That's where I think it became really solidified that, yeah, genuinely, this is the approach that the market is telling us it wants, and we doubled down on it, and to the point that like we actually put like really little effort into our marketplace. Like, it still exists, but it is not in like our priority list really at all, because there's so much value and functionality inside the ecosystem of managing centers. So like activities, rentals, vouchers, class passes, your instructors, your
Hmm.
schedule, how you deal with like reporting, payouts, your financial flows, all of that we take care of. And so, coming back to your point of like what problem do we solve, it's I guess we got a little bit of a bad answer, and then we try and solve all of these problems. And we could talk about like what the MVP was in a minute, but that was like one of the differentiating factors I think about our approach for like building a startup. We didn't choose like a single slice of this problem and try and solve really well for that. We took a very like wide approach and have, I like to think, quite successfully in hindsight solved a really wide variety of problems. People use the phrase like one-stop shop. I don't really like it, but it's kind of, it's the easiest way to think about it, right? That you can use eola to, if you want to set up your business or if you want to like use more modern tech, you can pretty just migrate your entire business to work around eola, and there's a huge amount of benefit that comes from that, because you're going from a setup where you frequently have either no booking system, no internal tools, or like it's spreadsheets, pen and paper, or you're using one of the tools that is out there that does backend management, but it's generally a much older kind of technology. Even moving stuff to the cloud was like relatively recent in our industry. So like we're doing AI, we're doing like loads of super dynamic kind of crazy things, super performant. And the idea is that you can either as like a one man band, or as like we've got pretty massive multi-center customers using it with like hundreds of instructors. It's all designed to be super scalable.
And how much time did it went from like the bad website to the realization that your idea or the problem that you want to solve is actually a different one, that you like, it's not the marketplace, it's like the booking system and the management system?
I think it was probably it wasn't like an immediate light bulb moment where we had like, we sat down a few weeks later and just thought, we need to do this. It wasn't like a pivot in that sense, but it was very kind of like a gradual shift, where I'd say probably, let's say 6 months after starting. By that point, I think we would both agree that like the priority was the back end, and the marketplace was definitely still super important at that point, but priority 2. And then as time went on, I mean, actually, other examples is that like pretty early on, we were convinced that we needed to integrate with loads of these online travel agencies ASAP, because that's what we expected the market to want. It was all about like integration. But we still haven't done that to this date, because it's just not what the market is telling us. Our speciality is like efficiency improvements in the management of your business. I'm sure, like, I know every business sort of says this sort of thing, but like it's genuinely crazy how much of an efficiency improvement we bring. And I think this is partly due to like our architecture and the way we thought about this, but the way I kind of think about it is, if you think about like the different tools that you use to run your startup, your business, whatever it is, they do normally solve for a specific slice, which is generally a more sane thing to do. Like you use Gmail for your communications, you use Slack for your internal communications, you might use like MailChimp to mail your customers. And so every tool gives you a small but worth it percentage increase in the productivity of you and your team. What we do, because we change so much about a business, where if you start using us, the entire life cycle of your business starts to is kind of run via eola, from the way that you advertise to how your customers book, either like directly via us, or like you input their details through like a booking flow, how you manage your team and your instructors and communicate internally, to the payment flows, the reporting. So what we see genuinely, like these aren't made up numbers, but they sound made up because they're absurd, but like we see essentially a doubling of the revenue of businesses that we bring on, because we not only increase their revenue on that end of the spectrum, where we've got a very high converting widget, um, but we also massively improve the amount of productivity that the team has. So with the same number of staff members, same number of instructors, same number of reception people, um, you can just take more bookings. And we've got like some crazy maths happening in the background to make sure all of your bookings like optimize in terms of allocations of instructors and resources. So it's a pretty awesome value prop in that it takes like a couple of days to go live with us, depending on how motivated you are, and then you can just pretty much like, depending on your setup, your mileage may vary, but like essentially like double the size of your business, which is wild. Like you're not going to get that from switching to Slack or Gmail or like any of these other kind of SaaS tools. And I genuinely can't think of another SaaS tool that kind of has that scale of impact. But I think a lot of that comes from the decision to, and like I said, I'm fully aware that it is not a conventional decision and not necessarily the best decision, but it has paid off for us of trying to solve a lot of different problems rather than a single slice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that you're really proud of your like product and results that that it brings. Like to be fair, yeah, we use Gmail, we use Slack, we use Reply, we use Mailchimp, but like in the end of the day, one of, for example, my thing that I do is stitching it all together via like integrations or Zapier or Make.com, which
Mm-hmm.
okay, like take my contacts from HubSpot, upload them there, like make sure they're marked in some way. And often, if we find a solution that have like a few things coming together and that is done like in a good way, we generally lean towards okay, like we just do a one thing that solves. Okay, it might solve like two problems, maybe not in the ideal way, but still it saves us a lot of like hustle of managing like 20 systems at a
Yeah.
single time. Um, and so yeah, you mentioned that you started with a pretty good idea of like fake ads and fake website, and by the months like six, you realized that something was going. The MVP was ready at the point. So how much time and money did you put into like MVP development of the product that you showed users for the first time as like an actual product?
Yeah. So I think that is where our risk was baked in. And yeah, if I was giving advice to a company about their MVP, it genuinely would not be to do it the way that we did. But I think our setup, in order for us to succeed, we kind of had to do it the way that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Where because we wanted to go down this approach where we had like the full stack, we're solving a wide variety of problems. It was like the point of an MVP is obviously to try and like break that down into like what is the smallest amount that you can deliver that will prove to yourselves and ideally others that this is actually a useful thing to continue building and investing in. And in order to get to that point where we could sort of do like the whole end-to-end thing of you add your activities, you can present them via a widget or actually just on our marketplace initially. You can log in as a center and manage bookings. Bearing in mind that like customers are actively showing up to your center as a result of the interactions that they've had with eola, and if we screw up, that is a direct like impact on your business. So we need to have enough there to make it so that we trust that ecosystem and we can deal with the edge cases of like, you know, just the obvious ones, even just like what happens if someone wants to cancel, what happens if someone wants to book. And a lot of it was kind of like driven via email initially, just like email prompts. But it got to the point where, yeah, I think we spent probably about 9 months on the MVP. Because we started in summer of 2017, and it was I think early 2018, but we got to the point where it was enough to start actually going out to the market and like legitimately not just asking for feedback and thoughts, but actually trying to be like, hey, actually use this, and tell us what you think. And yeah, it was obviously like we were still massively iterating and hanging on every word that our customers said. And then it was in 2019 actually that we properly launched commercially, I'd say. So our MVP stage was like massively drawn out, which is huge risk to take, right? Because it it costs time and money, right?
Yep.
And what happens if your bet is wrong? You've just wasted all of it. So I wouldn't recommend it to others, but in our case, to get to the point where we could prove that it wasn't just a marketplace listing and it wasn't just receiving a booking, it was like a little bit of functionality around everything. Does that actually work? Is that something that we can persuade someone to use? Yeah, realistically, kind of over a year. In terms of cost, though, the benefit was that because I was a co-founder, salary free for a while, well, for all of that actually, we didn't have much in the way of direct costs. It was just essentially opportunity cost for me and my co-founder, and within that window, we did also bring on 2 other developers. Initially, salary free. They knew what they were getting into. We've always been super clear and open about like people joining us. Like it's super high risk. Very much embodying that first post that I saw on Working Startups that it's probably not going to work out because most startups don't, right? We're not going to like mislead you, but let's try and build something awesome.
Interesting. And yeah, so you said that about like 9 months till you actually started showing it to the like your clients and customers, who they were, who your like first customers, where did you find them?
First ever customer was Frangipani Sup, a paddleboarding business in Essex. I don't think well, actually, no, yeah, she didn't know she was our first customer until about a year ago. She's still a happy customer today. And yeah, we found them by kind of just like we solve this problem for the activities industry, which is quite a wide variety of businesses from climbing, water sports, hiking, skiing, loads of different things. But we started out with the water sports vertical in particular because we needed to start somewhere. We need to actually get like market penetration or like at least understand a space and get a network effect going. And yeah, we had some vague connections in the water sports space. So our first 5 customers were like surf schools and stand-up paddleboarding places. All quite small. All were kind of, they knew what they were getting into, that we were trying to do something different, that this was a very early stage company. And I think really importantly, I think they felt very cared for, as I think that should always be the case, in that if they found a bug or something, like they would be talking to me directly and I would be trying to fix it, 11 p.m. on the Sunday night and to get it fixed by half an hour later. And every bit of feedback that they gave, if we implemented it, obviously they could see that their feedback meant something, but also if we didn't implement it, we would genuinely take the time to explain, like maybe this is a good idea, but we can't prioritize this now, or it depends on other things, or like this doesn't work for us because of XYZ. And we had like a very kind of direct engagement with our customers, which I like to think we like, even though we've got quite a lot more now, I'd like to think we're still doing today. I think we've got a pretty good community of customers.
That's interesting. And your current like ICP is like medium businesses, small businesses, because like as I understand, you work with a variety of like different sized like and even with government. So what are you aiming for now?
Yeah, so we've got a vertical that we're going for. It's quite difficult to describe because like in our industry, there are different expectations of like what an enterprise business in the activity space is obviously quite different to like an enterprise business in a SaaS space. But what we're primarily going after are kind of SMB plus businesses.
Hmm.
So these are it's a fragmented market, and we're looking at businesses that kind of turn over like a reasonable chunk of money where they are running themselves as a business. There's obviously a lot of folk in our industry do it vocationally, which we obviously support super massively. But obviously we need to chase the money somewhat. We've got a much more mature platform now, so we can go after bigger businesses that have higher revenue. They've probably got, let's say, I don't know, 10 to 30 instructors, kind of would be like an average customer profile. 10 to 30 customers. We're still somewhat seasonal, so we're looking to expand our kind of anti-seasonal offerings. So we're looking to get more tied in with the skiing space as well as evergreen sports, things that are popular all year round. We've seen like really rogue stuff as well has actually come worked in our favor. We've got we've got the slip and slide industry in the UK on lockdown apparently, which is something that's only kind of like cropped up about 2-3 years ago, but there are like loads of slip and slide businesses now. Most of them are using eola, and yeah, they're doing phenomenally. I think it's especially in harder times at the moment. Spending patterns are changing, obviously they are for everyone, but yeah, with cost of living going up so much, the likelihood that someone's going to spend a lot of money on an activity that lasts a few hours just goes down. So higher volume, cheaper activities, I think right now are doing better.
Hmm.
But it's a super interesting industry to work in, because you can see the impact, like everything on a macroeconomic spectrum. Like it's so visible, and I guess because we work with so many businesses, like for a startup of our size, we can genuinely see like industry trends and like what's working, what isn't working. But obviously, we try and like encourage our customers to capitalize on that as much as possible.
And you've talked, like I mentioned, like hard times, and you launched just before the COVID. So, and how did it like impact your business or your clients' businesses? And or it just like gave you like a new reason, or actually it was a tool for your clients to kind of thrive and come back from the problems that they had.
Yeah, it was really mixed. I don't know, it was kind of like a yeah, it was a really mixed response, I think. Initially, it was horrific for everyone, us included. Obviously, like we charge a commission primarily. So when our customers' bookings are down, our revenue is down directly. So again, we're like very very attuned to what's happening in the industry on a wider scale. And obviously, when lockdown started, especially the early lockdowns, where it was just basically just don't go outside. I remember looking at the graphs and just thinking like even on the worst days previously, we were still getting a good chunk of bookings come through. But I think there was like a day where we didn't get like a single booking come in across like hundreds of businesses in the UK, which is wild. That is genuinely absurd. And I think like that really kind of hit home how severe this impact is going to be. Then like it definitely wasn't the case for all of our customers, but the tides turned a little bit where people were allowed to go outside again and encouraged to do outdoor sports and exercise and that sort of stuff. Luckily, the vertical that we focused on is outdoor experiences, and generally speaking, again, this doesn't apply to all customers, generally speaking, they were things that you could do that you were more than a few meters apart from each other. You were outdoors, you weren't inside. You know, especially if our centers took necessary precautions of like disinfecting things, wearing masks, all of that sort of stuff, they could actually go ahead where the wider economy was still massively suffering. So a lot of our customers could actually start back up again, and they were, some of them especially, were like very in demand. Um, I remember actually when Boris first announced the kind of lockdown rule change where people could go outside provided they stayed X amount of meters apart. Um, we had a tiny fishery join us, so you pay to go like salmon fishing, whatever. There, tiny business. It was like a 1 person, 2 person business. You could see like in real time as that news came out, like huge spiking bookings. Like I think they got booked up like 6-9 months in advance or something. Just again crazy. Such a bizarre time. But like fishing obviously is like the kind of perfect thing to do because you pay to go outside and basically sit alone for a while. So yeah, we had a very kind of like mixed response. It was definitely ubiquitously awful to start with, but then some centers recovered quite strongly. Others, I think, were just hit so hard by the initial impact that it just didn't make up for that at all. But yeah, it was super bizarre time for everyone.
I see. Yeah, that's an interesting story because like yeah, I was always kind of curious about like what happened to the kind of it obviously that travel and everything was feeling super bad, but like more niche things, I was not really confident and like what happened to them. So Dan, you also like mentioned that like you've launched and added AI to the eola. So and what does AI do in your product specifically?
Sure. So we have 2 external-facing AI tools at the moment. We've got some more internal stuff as well. One is I think they're both interesting for different reasons. So the first one that we launched was an activity description generator, which is pretty much what it says on the tin. We will take metadata about your business, the activity information that you provided, and you click a button and it generates a really engaging description for your activity.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that we did this is, I mean, realistically, as far as AI things go, it's one of the easier things to do. It's pure text generation. But also, like, it was solving a real problem in our industry where, especially for smaller businesses, where let's say you've got like 5, 10, maybe 15 instructors, it is unlikely, or at least less likely, that out of that set of people, you've got someone there who is good at writing or good at marketing, good at kind of creating engaging content. And it's normally the instructors themselves or like the business owner, or there might be like a receptionist-esque sort of person that creates the activity descriptions. And unsurprisingly, the activity descriptions is one of the most important things in the customer journey to go from to get a customer to go from like curious to great, this sounds like fun, I want to do it, I want to actually give money to this and buy this experience. So we've long had a lot of descriptions which are kind of just rewordings of the title, or descriptions where they often rely on a lot of industry knowledge, because you're asking someone who's just not a specialist at this, often doing it a little bit reluctantly because it's not what they want to be doing. So like you might be having a skiing lesson and the description is like, this is a skiing lesson where you get better at skiing. We need a bit more exciting there. So adding a button means that it solves all of those problems. It's genuinely really engaging. I've been super happy with the results, as have our customers. It means that people can just spend way less time getting set up with us, so it's easier for onboarding and activation. And fundamentally, people can have a better time using the product because they can just focus on the things that they want to do most, which is kind of like one of our core philosophies, right? So that was something that we shipped quite early on in the AI hype that we are in at the moment. From my perspective, it was like a little bit of like a test of technology and how we could deliver it. The response we got was honestly way better than I would have ever thought, because from my perspective I thought like, yeah, this was cool, it does solve a problem, it's going to help, and we can like ship and move on to the next thing. But we did genuinely get like a lot of customer feedback that this is really awesome, and for people who just don't want to write lots of content across their like 20-30 activities, huge time saver. So that was really cool to hear. The second thing, which we've only just launched, and so we need to do like a proper marketing push on this because it is super 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 cool. Very different vibe. So there is a problem in our industry, which everyone is trying to solve, but it is a hard problem to solve because it's a human one. So I'm sure you have done, anyone who's listening has done activities where you buy the thing online, and when you arrive, most likely, ideally in advance, but at some point you have to fill in a questionnaire where it will ask you, do you have any health problems? Can you swim 50 meters? Can you walk unaided? Are you pregnant? All of those sorts of kinds of questions. And we have learned from our customers that even ones that have like quite formal, like there are bigger businesses, they have formal processes, like a committee that's in charge of like health and safety, that sort of thing. Even still, there is a roughly like 60% likelihood that an instructor will actually review your questions. So if you've answered your question pack, there's a 60% chance that an instructor will actually engage with your answers, just as a baseline. And then let's say you filled in your 15 question questionnaire. What is the likelihood that an instructor is then going to notice that the 7th question actually is slightly concerning? So you got a 60% chance of being seen in the first place, and then like a tiny chance after that to actually get noticed and have like a follow-up conversation with the instructor or the center, or have your booking cancelled or whatever it is. And that's not just like an annoying bureaucracy thing. Like in a lot of cases, that can have a direct, real impact on your safety as an attending customer, but also your responsibility and compliance of you as a center owner. Like your business has a responsibility to make sure that people don't do your activity that shouldn't be doing it. So what our latest AI tool does for you, if you enable it, is every single one of your questions that your customers answer, we'll go through our system and analyze the likelihood of that causing a point of concern for you as a center manager, instructor, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it will give you essentially like a traffic light system where it will say like, this is fine, this is concerning, and we've got like thresholds baked in so that it errs on the side of caution. And yeah, it's essentially in beta. We've done like small rounds of feedback so far, but we're ramping it up now. Early signs is that like this is genuinely super 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 useful. And it's the like zooming out a little bit. I've got, I think my hot take on the AI space is that I think even just 6 months ago you could have gotten away with just saying we're shipping AI. Whoa. Like fully on the AI hype train. But I think everyone is already a little bit like bored of that. And I think it's become quite clear to even people who aren't super techie that it's quite easy now to implement AI. Just implementing AI as like a baseline is not a differentiator. It's not a like it's shifting to be an expectation of the customer. Like if you've got a platform that is technical and mature, like why aren't you using AI is going to be like the shift in the next few months and years. And so it's not about whether or not you can ship it, because I think that's one of the reasons people have got so bored, because everyone's just shipping AI because that's the thing that everyone wants to see. Yeah. But the thing that's holding people back now is that it's not implementation difficulty, which it definitely used to be. Now it's not. It's implementation like detail. Like how can you think of use cases in your product that actively get solved reliably by AI. And I think the easiest, lowest hanging fruit at the moment is kind of like our activity description generator, where we've obviously spent like a lot of time crafting how that works. And I'm genuinely super proud of it. Like it works really well. But I think it's kind of like the lowest hanging fruit. Generate some text, you plop it into the page, customer's happy, you're happy, ROI up, conversion up, thumbs up. I think the kind of like next stage of this paradigm that we're in is like, how can you use AI logically in your platform? And I mean that in like a literal sense. Like, how can you bake it into your back-end flows so that it improves your product, not just by dumping text onto a page, but by mechanically changing flows or processes on the platform. So in our example of this kind of questionnaire analysis thing, there's a lot of work went into how can we make this super scalable so it answers so it reviews every single question in a way that makes sense. It gets loads of metadata. It can understand like kind of self-referential problems, but also can be parsed nicely by a backend. We're using AI functions, which is a brand new thing as well. And how do we build like a harness around this AI that means that it actively contributes to the logic of the platform? And what happens when it does slip up? How do we improve it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, people are just going to expect text generation. I mean, realistically, people are just going to use like browser extensions and stuff. Like, it's not going to be, you can't, like the window is closing on the time frame where I think you can say you've shipped AI by adding some kind of text generation. It's not really mechanically better than someone just copy pasting some stuff into ChatGPT and then copying and pasting it back. Like what extra value can you add that is like unique to your platform, that only makes sense with like the metadata that you have, potential like specific training that you have, that differentiates you from a chatbot that anyone can use. And yeah, we've also like been building internal tools as well around like sales systems, workflows, how we like do internal training and documentation stuff has all been kind of revolutionized by that. So our productivity is like hilariously up, given like the size and complexity of the platform. It's the world's changing, and text generation is, I don't think that's sexy anymore.
Yeah, the AI hype is absolutely real, or was absolutely real, and yeah, I can experience it myself. Like of some products that I use, that they just slap AI tag on the front page, and like I look at that, it either over promises or does like too simple stuff that does not super help me. And in both cases, yeah, I have like my ChatGPT window open, where just like do
Yeah,
stuff like my way that I know that this prompts will work for me. So yeah, um, it is real.
I
Uh, yeah.
I think just on that note, like this is mechanically different because it's proactive by the platform itself, where um it doesn't fundamentally solve the problem if you copied and
Hmm.
pasted all of the questionnaire stuff into ChatGPT and then asked it to rate
Yeah,
it,
I understand.
because you need to be proactive about it. Sorry.
Interesting, interesting. And do you have like further plans on AI, or what is like overall your vision of like where eola is going?
Yeah, so we've got a pipeline of stuff that we're working on the AI front. It's internal. This current iteration has been about internal tooling, which has been super cool. There's it's kind of crazy. Like we build something internally about like how we can harness this. I think just because we engaged with it quite early. Like I'm personally really passionate about AI. I'm gonna use the line I knew about it before it was cool. I was genuinely interested personally into like GPT-2 is when I got like really onto the GPT hype, and like the fear of it as well, because like it is dangerous. like we engaged with it super early. So we actually had a hackathon about a year and a half ago. Was it 2 years ago? Yeah, about 2 years ago. Where we used. So that's actually when we built the description generator 2 years ago. With yeah, I think it was GPT-2. And yeah, so I think we've just been like we've been super agile about it, like in a literal sense, in that we've reacted really quickly. We've got super engaged with it. Whereas I think even like a lot of developers I've been speaking to, I find it really bizarre to me. I know that I'm biased because I was always kind of super excited by it, but I think a lot of developers are dispassionate about it. Just like they like, oh, it's a buzz as like an NFT crypto hype thing. And I find that super bizarre because I would have expected as developers, like you're on the forefront of technology, or you're engaging with the stuff all the time, and you can also generally see when something is really hard to build. And I think, you know, the AI language models that we've now just kind of internalized as normal, like wildly difficult to build and requires wild amount of data, and the amount of iteration that we went through to get to this position is crazy. And what is unlocked is even more crazy. So I think there's like a lot of apathy. I think people were bored of NFTs and crypto, and this sounded like another buzzword, but I think fundamentally this has like a real impact on the end user. You're not shipping an NFT, which could have just been, you know, a record in a database. That happens to be an NFT. Like this actually fundamentally changes the user experience in a very clear and obvious way. I think people are now more kind of waking up to that. I can't remember your original question. I think I just went on a rant.
Yeah, but yeah, the kind of the amount of like possibilities, and I agree, like the potential like danger and problems it can cause is amusing, and like not looking at this at all. I don't know, not yeah, a bit weird. So then, probably like one or two my last questions. We've been talking for quite a while. Uh, Maybe can you give like some advice or some like main lessons you learned like building your own company? So what would you tell people that are thinking about starting their company or like working on their idea or MVP validation? So what was kind of the main things that you're seeing, either your main lessons or main things to that you pointed out that helped you?
um, I think the most common bit of advice I give people is like your idea doesn't really matter. Like it matters a little bit, but what matters way more is your execution. Don't think that you've dreamt up an idea and then the next step is wild success. Like thinking of an idea is the easy bit, right? You need to translate that idea into something that becomes a big business, and there's so many barriers in front of you to prevent that being the case, from competitors, people not believing you, getting funding, getting a team together, making sure like people problems don't get in the way, because it's a super tough journey. And yeah, the idea like it's expected to be decent, at least, right? You probably won't end up with the exact same idea that you started with, because it is all about the execution. And if you're too precious about the idea, then you're probably not focusing on the right thing. So I think
Any
yeah,
advice on how to do a good execution?
I think honestly, talk to people, get a lot of opinions, because there's no way that and like definitely talk to people who have done it before, and like look like they're tired and sad, because it's a long journey, and they'll have loads of advice, and most of it will be conflicting advice as well. Like we'll have talked to, I don't know, 20 people and got 20 different opinions about what we should do in a given situation, but they'll probably have some common themes that you can kind of pick apart. And yeah, like do stuff like this, like listen to podcasts, engage with the community, network. Like it's so much about like just having great luck, and the way that you improve your luck is just by improving the way you improve your situation is by maximizing your luck and just like roll the dice over and over and over again, meet as many people as possible. Because one of those times someone's going to be super useful for you, and you might want to hire them, you want to work with them, they might invest in you, whatever it is. Um, yeah, it kind of gets super connected in the industry.
I see. Thanks.
Um,
Thanks a lot for advice. Anything else?
no, I was going to just come back to the point earlier as well, and that like make sure like the founding team kind of is equipped to deal with not just like the problem of getting started, but um, being able to kind of craft a path for success. Um, Obviously, I'm very focused on the technical side, but also like on the go to market strategy. How do you commercialize this? How do you monetize this? Again, people have like an idea, and it might be really cool, but like, does the idea make money? Because it needs to be a business. You need to pay people. Um, so yeah, making sure that initial you're putting your best foot forward from day one. Essentially, I think it's the best advice I can
I
give.
see. So that's probably all of my questions. Then, if you want to add anything that you just want to say, or anything about eola, yeah, you're welcome.
Um, well, what? Yeah, I guess something I didn't mention earlier is that I started eola personally, not because I was interested in the activities industry. Like, I'm, I've not really engaged with it beforehand. Obviously love it now, but it was not something that I started with a passion in. What I wanted to do was build something that I'm proud of. And I think that's also quite important, like having the motivations that are real for you. Not everyone is going to be super motivated about like changing something in the finance world, or like changing something in some other kind of SaaS vertical or whatever. Um, Try and work out what your motivations are, and like I wanted to build something that I was really proud of with eola, from a product perspective, and I think we've definitely achieved that, and it's what keeps me going. Super proud of what the team has achieved. Like, we've been through a lot of ups and a lot of downs, just like any startup. But it's the team's like been absolutely phenomenal, 10 out of 10. And we've built something that, yeah, a lot of people seem to really connect with, and I'm, yeah, super chuffed with that.
Cool. Yeah. Good for you. So yeah, thanks a lot, Dan. Thanks for your time, for the advice and the insights. It was like real pleasure talking to you. And yeah, I guess we're good for today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Super good
Yeah.
chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah,